What is the greatest obstacle to human progress? You probably think it's ignorance. You'd be wrong. The historian Daniel Boorstin discovered a terrifying truth about our history. He argued that the greatest enemy of discovery wasn't what we didn't know. It was the illusion that we already knew the answer. For thousands of years, humanity was trapped in a prison of common sense and dogma. We didn't sail the oceans because we knew what was out there. We didn't look at the stars because we knew how the heavens moved. Today, I'm going to show you how a few amateurs shattered that illusion, and how things as seemingly random as dirty underwear and a scandalous table fork created the modern world. Hey everyone, welcome back. Look around the room you're in right now. The lights, the glass in your window, the book on your shelf. You are living inside a massive, invisible technology trap. We rely on a life support system of inventions we rarely understand. But how did we get here? It wasn't a straight line. It was a messy, chaotic web of accidents. In this video, we are going to tear apart the history of discovery. We'll see how the search for God led to the mechanical clock, how a surplus of linen shirts led to the printing press, and why using a fork was once considered a sin against God. By the end of this, you won't look at your watch or your dinner the same way again. Let's dive in. Let's start with the first grand discovery, time. For most of human history, we were slaves to the sun. If you were a farmer in 500 BC, you didn't care about minutes or seconds. You cared about day and night. The day was divided into temporary hours. In the summer, daylight hours were long. In the winter, they were short. Time literally stretched and shrank. So, who changed it? Farmers? Kings? No, it was monks. See, in the Middle Ages, monks had a strict schedule of prayer. They needed to wake up in the middle of the night to pray. A sundial is useless in the dark. Water clocks froze in the winter. They needed a machine that could hack time into equal, reliable chunks, regardless of the sun. This need for a holy alarm clock led to the invention of the escapement, a mechanism that regulates energy. This created the first mechanical clocks. But here's where it gets even crazier. By creating the mechanical clock, humanity declared independence from the sun. We created the equal hour. Suddenly, time was something you could count, buy, and sell. But there was a catch. Boorstin points out that by mastering time, we became servants to the machine. We moved from the cycle of nature to the tyranny of the schedule. Just as we were trapped by temporary hours, we were also trapped by a geography of the imagination. For nearly 1,000 years, Western mapmakers weren't interested in reality. They were interested in theology. They drew maps that located the Garden of Eden but left out the Pacific Ocean. This was the Great Interruption, where dogma blocked the path to the real world. So, how did we break out? We needed a magic stone, the magnetic compass. Originally, the Chinese used lodestones for fortune-telling, literally using magnetism to predict the future. When this tech reached Europe, sailors were terrified of it. It smacked of black magic. Prudent captains actually hid their compasses in a little box, a binnacle, to keep the crew from freaking out. Most people get this wrong, and here is why. We assume exploration is about going out, but the most important part of exploration is the ability to come back. Without the compass, you hugged the coast. With the compass, you could sail into the void of the ocean, the green sea of darkness, and trust you could find your way home. This confidence launched the age of discovery. But while the Portuguese were sailing around Africa, something strange was happening back on land, involving the most boring thing imaginable: laundry. This is my favorite connection from James Burke. In the 14th century, there was a massive boom in the textile industry. Suddenly, people were wearing linen underwear. When that underwear wore out, it was thrown away. This created a massive surplus of linen rags. Why does this matter? Because you can't make cheap paper out of nothing, but you can make it out of linen rags. The price of paper plummeted. At the same time, the Black Death had killed off so many scribes that the cost of handwriting books had skyrocketed. You had cheap paper, but expensive writing. The world was begging for a solution. Enter Johann Gutenberg. He wasn't a scholar, he was a metallurgist, a goldsmith. He realized he could use his skill to punch letters into a mold, pour in molten lead, and create interchangeable type. But here is the kicker. Gutenberg didn't just want to print books. He wanted to counterfeit manuscripts. He tried to make his printed Bibles look exactly like the handwritten ones to avoid upsetting the scribes. The printing press didn't just spread information. It destroyed the monopoly of knowledge held by the elite. It created a feedback loop where scientists could read each other's work, argue, and improve. Science went public. But while the printing press was expanding our minds, another invention was about to expand our vision. Remember the illusion of knowledge? The idea that we already know what the universe looks like? Well, common sense told us the earth was still and the sun moved. Common sense told us water was just clear liquid. Then came the lens. Glassmakers in Venice and Holland started grinding lenses, originally just for spectacles to help old men read. But then some illiterate mechanics, not professors, started stacking these lenses. Galileo took this spyglass and pointed it at the sky. What he saw terrified the authorities. He saw spots on the sun and mountains on the moon. The heavens weren't perfect spheres. They were physical, jagged, and messy. Simultaneously, people turned the tubes downward and invented the microscope. Suddenly, a drop of water wasn't just water, it was a zoo of animalcules. People didn't want to believe these tools. When Galileo offered to show the professors the moons of Jupiter, some refused to look. They argued that if Aristotle hadn't mentioned it, it couldn't exist. They preferred the illusion of knowledge to the evidence of their own eyes. We've covered clocks, maps, and telescopes. But sometimes technology changes us in intimate, personal ways. Let's talk about the fork. For thousands of years, eating was a communal act. You dipped your hands into a shared bowl. When a Byzantine princess brought a fork to Venice in the 11th century, the clergy were horrified. They preached that God gave us natural forks, our fingers, and using a metal tool was an insult to divine design. It took centuries for the fork to be accepted. Why? Because it represented a shift from the communal to the individual. When you use a fork, you are separating yourself from the food and from the people around you. We became cleaner, yes, but also more isolated. The fork is a perfect example of how technology doesn't just change what we do, it changes who we think we are. Conclusion. So, what connects the clock, the compass, the printing press, and the fork? They all shattered the illusion that the world was static and fully known. The people who built our world, the Columbuses, the Gutenbergs, the Galileos, were often amateurs who dared to ask, what if we are wrong? They taught us that the world is not finished. It is still being discovered. So, here is my question for you. What is the illusion of knowledge we are living in today? What is the thing we are so sure is true that people 100 years from now will laugh at us for believing? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and keep seeking.